Hey everyone, welcome back. Sorry it's been so long since the last video. Holidays, family, all that kind of stuff. Work gets in the way a little bit. So last time we were here, we did the procedural breakup of the skin on our bat creature. Also, quick reminder, if you have not downloaded the files, you can go to the first one. I linked it up. You can just download the file and work along with me. A couple things have changed since I did that last video. And the first thing would be if you go to edit, then preferences, there's a small little beta update, and then if you check it, close Marmoset, open Marmoset, it'll ask you to download and install the new beta version of this software. And this has a couple different features like mirrored texturing, kind of like Substance, so you can texture on this side and that side. It made it so when you blur, it doesn't show the underlying like seams of these UV segments. And then if you're using volumetric scattering, which we might use and probably will use, when you use volumetric scattering, it would actually show these like topology lines. So, and there's a couple other things. The downside is because it's a beta, it does crash sometimes and doesn't work as intended sometimes. So I'll be using that. So if you see some things that are slightly different, like the symmetry painting, that'll be it. I'll also be using a tablet and mouse for this little portion of the video. For this portion of the video, we are going to be doing color hand, like the big swaths of color by hand here, basically just to break up this creature. So yellows, pinks, the real big swaths, nothing super finite, nothing super detailed. We'll get into that in an additional video. So without delay, let's get going. We're going to come up here. We're going to start. Let's go ahead and delete that. Let's click here. Go ahead and get a fill layer. Alt click to just bring up the albedo. Let's go ahead and select yellow. There we go. I'm going to come up here to the blending, and I'm gonna, just like in Photoshop, and choose overlay. That's what we're looking for. I'm gonna go ahead and call this stomach yellow overlay, just so I know what it is. I'm gonna go ahead and right click, add a black mask, because we want to go in a non-destructive workflow. Okay, now that I'm here, I can come up here and click this little paintbrush. Okay, and then you can see this is where the symmetry, a couple different things, lazy mouse, a couple different things have been added up here. It used to just be size, opacity, flow, and culling, I believe. I believe all this stuff's new. So if you do mirror, now it, just like in Substance, it gives you a mirror so you can see it on both sides. So we're going to be using that just to speed this up a bit. Okay, let me bring my, there we go. All right, this doesn't have to be too detailed, so don't worry about too much about like, oh, am I hitting the right spot? Am I not hitting the right spot? Like, do I have to get down to this crevice? Right now, we're really just going for like big areas. We just want to make sure that we get these large segments painted in, just so it adds a little bit of like color diversity to this creature, make it a little bit more interesting to look at. Okay. All right, let's get a little bit on the front of the shoulder here. And we'll get a little bit up into here. If you hit X, it'll back out for you. So it'll back out of the, like reverse the mask. So now I'm erasing instead of painting. So if you just hit X, it'll toggle back and forth, so you don't have to come over here and reverse it over here. Okay, let's see. Let's get a little bit up onto the collar, a little onto the neck. There we go. Cool. Let's see. All right. So the next thing I want to do is I want to add a blur to this, so we don't have that hard line. So I'm going to come over here onto the mask, go ahead and adjustment layer and hit blur. And then I'm just going to drag the blur until it blends in how I want it to blend in. Good. Now we have a little bit of that. We can also adjust if we want the opacity of this. at the moment. We'll just keep it real high. Okay, the next thing that I want to do here is I'm going to go ahead and, again, add a new fill layer. Alt select albedo. We're just going to choose yellow again. You can also duplicate this. You can also duplicate this out. And I'm going to name this stomach yellow normal. Okay. And just like before, I'm going to switch over to my mouse. Sometimes pen, at least with my tablet, gets a little finicky when we're up and over here. Okay. Let's go mask, add a black mask. All right, I'm just going to check something real quick. Subsurface. Okay, we're good with that. All right, now that we're here, come back to my brush. We can go ahead and turn symmetry on the mirror again. All right. And let's paint a little bit of this goodness in here, huh? There we go. Just going to outline this rib cage a little bit with some of this yellow. There we go. Okay. There we go. Give a little bit of a highlight here. There we go. All right, cool. And let's give a little bit in here. Cool, and same thing here. We're gonna come up here to adjustment, add a blur. We're gonna blur this out pretty good. We just wanna make sure that we're not blurring it so much though that we lose the separation between it. And then I'm gonna go to the main layer. I'm actually gonna drop this down just because we just want a little highlight, just to bring a little bit of yellow. I actually like what this has done. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and in between the two layers, I'm going to go ahead and add another fill layer. We're going to choose more of like an orangey red. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and add a black mask to this. Go up to the paintbrush. Let's go ahead and add symmetry again. I don't know why it doesn't keep on. I guess it's because it's a new layer. Hopefully they fix that. That would be nice, wouldn't it? All right, let's see. Let's get definitely outline some of these surfaces here. Get a little bit more. Let's see. There we go. Okay, there we go. All right, now that we're here, let's go ahead and add a blur again. Let's get that blur a little more intense. I'm actually going to click here. I'm going to drag this whole thing underneath this. So that's not what we wanted. Hopefully it doesn't break. All right, let's try this again. There we go. And turn that off. Turn this on. Standard. Overlay. Actually, let's go. I'm trying to click here. Let's look what overlay looks like. All right, cool. And I'm going to drop this down. We just want a little bit of pop of color in there. There we go. And we'll probably adjust this further. Stomach, just going to rename this. Okay, cool. So this is all of our stomach stuff. So the next thing I want to do is I want to get those the wings, like this thin material. So we're going to go ahead and click. We're just going to go albedo for now. Later, we'll use this to adjust the scatter map because right now we have subsurface scatter on this whole creature. And what we're going to do is we're going to crank the subsurface scattering up to like 10 millimeters instead of 1 to 2 millimeters. And that's going to make this extremely transparent, and light's going to come through this very, very quickly and easily. But we don't want it to be like that on the rest of the skin. So we'll actually end up using the normal scatter, and we'll turn it down to like 2/10. So it basically equals 2 out of 10. And then we'll leave this at full power. So we'll be doing that later, but that we don't need to worry about that at this very moment. Okay. Let's go a little more red. We'll play around with this later, but that's good for now. We'll call this thin skin. We're going to go ahead and right click, add a black mask, click here. Let's go ahead and add that symmetry on again. All right, now we can go ahead and texture everything up in here. So while we're texturing all of this, if it's a little hard to see because of the render, you can come in here and turn ray tracing off. And then that'll just make it a little bit easier to see what you're doing without having to let it do that little bit of like old school rendering where it does piece by piece and takes a couple seconds for it to actually become like thoroughly visible. All right, we'll come up here. Good. We also want to keep these fingers from being painted. We're going to use a blur here in a little bit. That way we get some stretching. But one of the things we definitely don't want to do, and we'll have to come back in and edit it for sure once we start getting these final textures coming together. But one thing that we're going to want to do is make sure these fingers or anything that has like bone, musculature, anything along those lines, we definitely don't want to paint this thin skin on, since we will be using that subsurface scattering or volumetric scattering map. So at the moment, it's going to be super important that we don't do that. So let me go ahead and paint this X. There we go. And like I said, we don't have to worry too much right now, but we'll go edit that in a little bit. Okay, and then we want to make sure we also get the underside to this too, okay? So we'll be slowly building up colors as we go here. It won't just only be this. We'll also have to add some additional wing adjustment colors in here. Let me adjust this so I can see. There we go. We want to make sure that we're not just using a single color like what we're kind of doing right now. We want to make sure that we're like we did with the stomach. It's subtle and we'll probably add more, but you want to start with like the darker colors and then build up to the lighter colors, and kind of using overlays a good blend mode, because it allows a little bit of that stuff to pass through. But we're also going to have to go back in and add adjustments to the top layer too. So we can't get by just with the overlay. We're going to have to make sure we darken the cavities. We're going to have to make sure that we lighten the highlights, all that kind of stuff, because it's not real world. We're rendering real time for a game, so it can't catch all that stuff. So we have to cheat a little bit. So we'll be adjusting a lot of the textures to kind of play correctly. The ray tracing will help a lot with this, because it'll actually calculate light and shadow a little bit more realistically than like rasterized renders. But it's still a good idea, because most games aren't super intensive on ray tracing yet, and if they are, they don't perform super well. So all right, so let's come up here, let's go blur. There we go. Get a nice little blur going. I'm gonna come back down here, back to here, and I'm gonna go ahead and I kind of want to make this a little larger, and I'm gonna remove a little bit more around those fingers. It's okay if it doesn't come right up to it, but I want to make sure that those fingers are completely solid and not covered by this thin skin texture that we're putting on right now. So okay, and then just like before, we got to make sure that we do it on what we do on the bottom, we do on the top. And we'll come back in and edit this for sure, but just for now, this will work. There we go. Cool. So now we're there. Let's go to overlay. Boom. So now we're overlaid. Let's go back into that mask, and I want to check one thing. Just come in here and look and make sure you're smooth. Sometimes you can miss a portion of this. Like you can see up here, I've missed a little bit of painting, and it's really easy to, sometimes you miss and it's hard to see. Oh, that's not what we wanted. There we go. So make sure that we get these small little pieces in here, because the way the brush naturally has a little bit of culling on it, so you can adjust it in like the tool settings. Down here, backface culling, backface fall off. So sometimes if it goes over like a rough edge, it won't grab all the parts of it. It will like leave this little black mark right here. So we just want to make sure that we fill in those spots that need to be filled in. No major gaps. You can have little ones, but definitely no major ones. All right, make sure we clean that up. Okay, turn the blur back on, and we're good. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do, let's go back to the scene. Let's turn on ray tracing to make sure we're looking good. Okay, so that's not what we wanted. Let's delete that. I'm gonna save as. Okay, let's see. There we go. All right, so we'll go back and edit this, but right now that looks pretty good. A little bit of color there, a little bit of color there. So the next thing we want to do inside this paint layer, turn the blur off, back in the paint layer, paint. I forgot that we have a couple other spots that we want to hit in here. All right, so we want to make sure that we texture this as well, because this thin little connective tissue between the upper and lower jaw. There we go. We want to make sure all that. We will be painting in the gums later, so don't worry about. Let's rotate the light, see if we can get some light in there. There we go. All right, cool. And then we also want to paint inside here. So the ear has these like cartilage rings that I sculpted in, and those are going to be a little bit thicker than the rest of the ear. So what we're going to try to do, also this color would not actually be like a different color in the ear. It would actually be the same as the skin. But since we are using this as also, in the future we'll be duplicating this out and using it for subsurface scattering, or even maybe on this layer, we want to make sure. Cool. Let's blur that out. Let's find those ears. Okay, actually, I'm not liking the amount of blur that we have going on here with this one. So I'm going to actually remove this. There we go. Yep, remove that. And I'm going to turn this blur back on. I'm going to select this whole thin skin. I'm going to right click. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate. I'm going to call this thin skin ear. And then what we can do here is we can delete those two, and then we can just add a black mask, and we'll paint in what we want. Add a black mask. We'll come up here, and then we'll basically do the exact same thing. We don't want to double up if we're going to be using two different adjustments from the thin skin on the wing to the thin skin on the ear, but it will be the same color. Now that we have it on two, though, we will have to remember if we do have to come back and repaint. If we change the color on the thin skin, we're going to have to come in and change the color here too, okay? So it's important that we remember that now that we've split it. But sometimes you don't get the desired effect off of one single layer, even though you want it to affect the same thing. So you'll have to play around with it a little bit. So this is just one solution. Okay, so now that I'm here, let's go add a blur. There we go, just a little blur. Oh, actually, that was bad on me. So we were here and we actually didn't have symmetry on. So let's go ahead and do mirror symmetry. We're just going to trace over this again, just so the other side gets a little bit of love. There we go. Perfect. Actually, let's get a little bit of that. All right, cool. Now that we're thin skin ear, we're going to go down to this stomach overlay again. I want to adjust just a couple more things while we're here. Come back to our paintbrush. Let's get a little... There we go. There we go. Just want to get a little bit of yellow up in there. We'll close that down. We'll go into this one. Same thing. Back up to brush. Make it a little smaller. There we go. Cool. All right, now to wrap this up, just so this video isn't too long, because we've already been going for 20 minutes, we'll do one more and then we'll save the rest for a future video. So one more fill layer. We're gonna go albedo. We're gonna choose like a pinkish red. All right, cool. We're gonna rename this to like nose pink. So when I was sculpting this, I actually took a reference from Black Mask. I took reference from the like star-nosed mole for this. So and we will be adjusting this further, so don't get too turned off by the amount of color that we're dealing with here. There we go. Let's get you. There we go. All right, a little bit of you, and I'm actually going to come in and paint on these little jowls too. I know we weren't going to do smaller detail work here. We just wanted to do the larger scale work. But since we're on the same color, I'm going to go the same layer. I'm going to go ahead and get this going, even though that's not what we initially had planned. All right, so let's go ahead into the layer itself, not the mask, and go ahead overlay. And let's see. And there we go. Cool. Turn the opacity down a little bit, just so it's not too bright. And what we'll end up doing is going over all these passes with the cavities and the highlights, and we'll put some more breakup and stuff like this on all of this to let that breakup come through just a little bit more. There we go. Okay, so just to wrap up what we've done today, it doesn't look super great yet, but it will. We just have to continue to layer. So last video we did the procedural skin breakup. This video we did the major hand painting of the color variations in here in like an analogous color scheme. So we definitely wanted to stay in like purples, pinks, blues, as well as like on the other side, like more so like adjacent and adjacent complementary colors. So the yellow to the purple, because yellow and purple definitely complement each other well. So now that we've done that, we have a little bit more color into this, and it's not perfect yet, but we're moving in the right direction. So the next video, what we'll do is we'll come in and we'll start painting a little bit more of the hand painting a little bit more of the fine details here. So a little bit more color variation. We'll add some more blending on top of these to make them blend into the back and under skin just a little bit more. All right, well, thank you for stopping by, and until next video.